r/SupportForWaywards. My selfishness ruined my family. Story 1. I'm a selfish person. At least that is what I say to myself repeatedly almost every night when I hear the silence in my home. My children aren't here. My ex-husband hates me for good reason. My immediate family is divided and I never stopped hating myself for what I did. My selfish act happened in 2015. I just turned 39 and I admit I took my ex-husband for granted. My ex always told me that I was beautiful on a daily basis, always wanted to be intimate, always took care of me, and treated me like his equal. He never treated me like I'm a queen or a princess. I was his partner. We'd been married for 20 years by that time, high school sweethearts, each other's one and only, and it felt right. My family loved him, my brother looked up to him, and my ex helped him through a lot of tough situations. My ex was the one people called when they were in trouble and he helped them. He was a good man. Throughout the years, I gave him 2 headstrong boys. At the time of this, they were 18 and 16, and twin princesses 13. I gained weight and felt self-conscious, and he would tell me that I was beautiful. Our arguments were always few and far between. We talked everything out, but when we did argue, it was usually about intimacy or lack thereof on my behalf, and the things I refused to do in bed. It wasn't as if I didn't want to do them, it's just that I wasn't in the mood and he understood. When I turned 39, my birthday party revealed the new me. I spent all year in the gym doing yoga and Pilates. My effort took me from being 180 to 135, and for me, it was an amazing transformation. I've always been a chubby girl, so to have a body that was tight and fit was a new experience. My ex-husband also went to the gym with me, but not as much. However, he went from 260 to 225 and he was starting to shape his body. My ex-husband couldn't keep his hands off of me, but for some reason, I still wasn't in the mood. It's not like he didn't try. We went to dinners, danced, and did regular walks. He always helped around the house, and I could see in his eyes how much he loved and wanted me. 20 years together, and he still looked at me with desire. I believe any woman would desperately want that, but mentally, I just wasn't in the mood. At the time, I thought I was going through early menopause since we only got intimate 2, maybe 3 times a month, and I was just one and done, but he wanted more, and no matter how much he tried, I just wasn't into it. He mentioned couple counseling, and I refused. So now my selfishness comes into play. A new manager started working in my office a few days after my birthday. He was slightly younger and handsome, and for some reason he took an interest in me. At first I ignored him, then it went from ignoring to casual conversation, then he flirted and I showed him my ring. However, after 2 months of constant flirting, I flirted back, and which led me to telling him about my life, and I found myself thinking about him more and more. This was an emotional affair, I know that now, but at the time I felt high. My ex-husband suspected there was something off with me. We had a heated argument about it, one that I honestly believe I started. He went to kiss me and I subconsciously gave him a disgusted look. It wasn't toward my ex. I was thinking about this man when he leaned in and I felt disgusted with the whole thing. At least that is what I say to myself. A week after that day, I told the new manager to meet me at a cafe so we could talk. I had every intention to tell this man to leave me alone. I tried to tell him that I couldn't do this, but before I could say anything to him, he kissed me, and my mind went blank. That was the beginning of our 6-month affair. During that time, I did things to this man that my ex wanted, and I was more eager and willing. I was always in the mood. I believe it was because it was something new. My ex and I did get intimate during this time, but not as frequently. I began pushing him away, nitpicking on the little habits. I even belittled him. I'm ashamed now of how I treated him during that time. I only realized what I was doing when my brother came to visit me and told me that my ex confided in him about how depressed he was feeling and was thinking about filing a separation, saying that he felt that I don't love him anymore and that he was starting to fall out of love with me, and that snapped me out of it. So I immediately called it off, quit my job, and told myself that I was going to make my husband feel loved and wanted. I was going to fix this. I was going to be a better wife if I could. My affair partner showed up at my house with a box from my office, stuff from my desk that I requested to have shipped. We spoke, he wanted to know what he did wrong, and I told him that I needed to fix my marriage. I told him to leave and he wanted one last go around, and I told him no, and he begged and pleaded, and like a fool, I agreed. We went to the guest room and we went at it. I do not know how long we were doing it, but I felt him violently jerk back and there was a loud bang. I sat up and my ex was looking at me. My affair partner was on the floor and there was a large hole in the wall. I tried to say something to my ex, but his eyes were bloodshot, there were tears flowing, and his lips were trembling. I could see he was in so much pain and I felt so disgusted. I watched as my affair partner stood up and attempted to leave. My ex looked at him and my affair partner told him that if he knew what was good for him, he'd step back. So my ex attacked him. I screamed and I cried, telling my ex to stop, and out of desperation, I jumped on his back, which resulted in me getting slammed to the floor. Everything got hazy for a while. Words sounded muffled, but when I came to, my ex had my affair partner on his side and he was on the phone. All I could do was stare at my affair partner's swollen face. There was a loud bang on the door and I watched my ex put the phone on speaker, slowly place it on the floor, drop to his knees and place his hands on the back of his head. The door opened and the police came in. They handcuffed him and the paramedics came in moments later. I soon learned that he called 911 on himself. At the hospital, my father didn't utter a word to me. He just looked at me with shame. My brother was yelling at me. He looked crushed, asking me, how could I do that to my ex? My mother was consoling me, telling me that it was all right, which caused my father to yell at her. His family was furious. His sisters threatened, and his parents looked like they wanted to send me to an early grave. I approached my children, and they refused to speak to me. My sons couldn't even look at me. My affair partner was heavily injured and needed reconstructive surgery on his face. At the hospital, a woman came to my room and immediately attacked me. My brother pulled her off of me and it turned out she was my affair partner's wife. I didn't know he was married. He never wore a ring. Never once said anything. It made me feel even more terrible. Leading up to the trial, my boys stayed with their grandparents on my husband's side and my girls refused to talk to me. My ex didn't want to see me either. I tried to visit him in the county, but I was denied. My brother made sure my ex went to the correctional facility he was working at so he could keep an eye on him. When I asked my brother if he could relay a message for me, he told me to go to hell. During the trial, it was the first time in 3 months that I saw him. He looked at me with such anger, it hurt more than anything I could ever imagine. He always looked at me with love, even when we were mad at one another, but during that trial, it was hate, and I needed to excuse myself so I could cry in the restroom. As the days went by, I was forced to recount my affair in every detail for all to hear. When I told them how long it was, my ex looked crushed and my father stood up and walked out of the courtroom. During my ex's testimony, I learned that he came home to surprise me with lunch and a weekend trip for two to the Catskills. He had a full romantic getaway planned only to walk in on us and react. He stated that when the affair partner ordered him to step aside, he snapped and beat him only to stop when he tossed me off of him. He quickly called 911 and heard the recording at court. Hearing the pain in his voice and his sobs as he did what the operator told him to do was soul-crushing. The affair partner couldn't verbally testify and was heavily medicated, so they used images of what he looked like, which turned my stomach because I was responsible for all of this. They stated that there were bone fragments too small to piece together. My ex was charged with a third-degree felony and sentenced to 7 years, which caused my sons to shout in protest and my daughters and his family to let out a wail that haunts me to this day. The first 3 months were torturous. I was sued by my affair partner's soon-to-be ex-wife for alienation of affection. My ex filed for divorce. My eldest moved out. My other son stayed in his room and my twins were rebelling hard. My former sister-in-law attacked me in the middle of Price Chopper. His mother spat in my face when I tried to apologize to her. My father and brother refused to speak to me. Eventually, I needed to find a new job. There was no money coming in and I nearly went through my savings, but I was pretty much blacklisted in my field. It was bad publicity for the accounting firm, so I started working in retail and worked as a seasonal H&R Block adjuster during the tax rush. I almost lost the house. My ex refused to allow me to visit him and every letter was returned. Crying in the shower became an almost daily occurrence. My parents almost separated because my mother constantly defended me. My brother refused to acknowledge me. Even my friends, whom I had since grade school, were divided. Soon, I began to have thoughts of ending things, of picking up my belongings and disappearing. The guilt was just so heavy. Eventually, I saw a therapist and she scolded me, told me that I just got comfortable with my ex. I didn't see him as a husband. I saw him as a friend with benefits and I treated him as such. She's right. I did. I got too comfortable with him. I saw him as a companion, yet he saw me as his wife, the mother of his children, and the woman he loved and desired. I took him for granted. Almost a year went by. After a year of silence from my children, when I cooked dinner, they would collect their food and go to their rooms, refusing to even look at me. I did have a few meltdowns, begging them to say something to me, but nothing. My brother got married, and I wasn't invited. My kids were. I continued to try to visit my ex in hopes that he would place me on the visitor list, but I was always denied. My letters were still being returned, and it made me severely depressed, and I knew I deserved it. Then one day, out of the blue, my brother showed up. I was shocked and happy to see him. This was the first time since the trial that he came to my house, and he just came to scold me. Told me that my ex was in the infirmary. An inmate tried to come on to him in his cell, resulting in my ex getting and the inmate getting his spine broken. My brother screamed at me, "You did this," before going back to his truck. I cried for days after that, because he was right. I did this. I tried to visit him at the infirmary, but I was still denied. For 4 additional years, I had tried to talk to him and still wrote letters, but they were returned. Thankfully, our children visited their father a lot, and that is how I learned he had been placed in protective custody by my brother since his attack. Through the years, my eldest went to the same college my ex attended and even took the same major. He only calls his siblings. He never wanted to talk to me. He never comes to the house for the holidays, only to his grandparents. My other son followed suit by going to the same college and refusing to call me as well. My twins were hard on me, but they visited their father weekly, which improved their mood, and whenever they got overly rebellious, they had their uncle put them in their place, but my brother and I still hardly spoke. I tried to visit his wife when they had their first child, but I was asked to leave. My mother kept me in the loop about what was happening in their lives. My father still refused to acknowledge me. Then at the beginning of this year, in May, my kids were happy and my sons came home. I didn't know why and I didn't care they were home. For 4 months, my children were around and I did everything I could to show them how sorry I was. But I was mostly ignored, but they were talking to me and it made me feel so happy to have a conversation with them, to know what was happening in their lives. My eldest was dating a woman for over a year. My second son was on a college track team. Even my girls began to talk to me again and I hated myself even more for what I did to them. Seeing them smiling again, joking, and eating dinner together, I missed it all so much. Then at the end of August, I was all gearing up for the twins' first day of their senior year, which also falls on their 18th birthday. I expressed my excitement over their birthday party, told them I was planning to do, and without hesitation, my girls asked me if we could do it on a different day. It confused me because I thought we were starting to get better. When I asked why, one of them said, "Because Dad is throwing us a party and I don't want you near him." That comment shocked me. I asked when their father was released and they said he got out at the end of April for good behavior. I cried because he was out and it broke me a bit more. They were around more because he was out. They were happier and more cheerful because they had their father back in their lives. It wasn't because we were starting to heal. They had him back. I asked where he was staying and they told me that he was staying with my brother. I tried calling. I needed to talk to him, but he refused. I tried going over, holding all the letters that were returned through the years, and I saw him briefly through the door cracked. I shouted out his name and I was asked to leave by my brother. I handed him the letters and he left. When I got to the driveway, I heard his voice. I turned around and he was walking towards me. I instantly started crying and went to hug him and he handed me back my letters. "You forgot this," he coldly said to me, and I cried watching him walk away. I begged and I pleaded for him to just talk to me and he just walked back into that house. My children were staring at me by the door and they all had no love in their eyes for me. At that moment, I realized that my children were just tolerating me. However, I still want to fix this. I still want to tell him how selfish I was. I still want to tell him how much I miss him. Tell him that I'm so sorry for destroying what we had. So I'm still trying to push through my daily life. I learned from my mother that my affair partner's ex-wife was visiting my ex 2 years ago and she's been coming around to see him. I don't really care. I just want him to somehow forgive me. I want him to talk to me. I want him to be beside me. I want him to look at me the way he used to. I want my kids beside us, and I just want my family back. Yet I know I don't deserve it. Even if by some miracle we become one again, it will never be the same. I was selfish and I wish I could take it all back. Life can occasionally push us into the deep end, and when we find ourselves battling with our own mistakes, it's tough. This story is a powerful testament to the complexities of human relationships and the implications of our actions. A nod to the lady for her raw honesty. She doesn't shy away from admitting her own selfishness and the damage it has caused her family. It's a rare and admirable trait to face one's faults head on. The story takes us through a turbulent journey of love, betrayal, and regret. Her confession of engaging in an emotional affair, neglecting her husband, and ultimately causing a violent confrontation is heartbreaking. It reminds us that even seemingly small choices can lead to profound consequences. Family dynamics play a major role in this case. The ex-husband's and children's anguish is evident. It's an eye-opening reminder of the impact of our actions can have on individuals we care about. The children's difficult relationship with both parents highlight the deep wounds caused by the incident. The passing of time is an important subject in this story. Years pass, but the scars linger, as does the lady's attempt to repair her family. It demonstrates the enduring power of love as well as the human capacity for change and redemption. The story also emphasizes the importance of receiving professional help when dealing with personal issues. The therapist's stern words served as a wake-up call, forcing the lady to face her shortcomings and accept responsibility for her actions. Finally, this story serves as a stark reminder that life is messy, and we all make mistakes along the way. It urges us to consider our own actions and the consequences they have on our loved ones. Ultimately, it's a story of optimism, growth, and the never-ending need for forgiveness and reconciliation. It tells us that even when we make the biggest mistakes, there is still the possibility of coming to terms with them and healing.
Ooh, something came in the mail today. I wonder what it is. It's Rufus rugs!
Got him!
Now, hopefully after this ad plays, you two can say you got him! A rug from Rufus Rugs. Now me and the boys have been grinding non-stop 24/7, making one-of-one hand-tufted premium rugs. Now there's a chance you own a carpet that looks something like this. Let's just be real, it's time for an upgrade. And luckily for you, me and the boys from Rufus Rugs are at your service. We don't make those average cheap quality looking rugs. Nope, not gonna happen. Each one is handcrafted to perfection. No shortcuts, no robot assembly lines, and no dropshipping BS. Just pure rug grind. Whether you love anime, sports, cars, or anything else you can think of, we can turn it into a rug. So click the first link in the description and have your custom idea come to life.
Story 2. I've been struggling to sleep since I last saw my husband. I can barely sleep longer than 3 hours, and when I do sleep, I keep having these awful nightmares. My counseling session is in a couple of days, but I'm not doing well at all. I can't really talk to anyone either because all of my close friends have been supporting my husband now that they know about my infidelity. My sister won't talk to me or return any of my messages. My dad is seeming to do everything he can to avoid me. And my mom has been very clear about how disappointed she is given my actions and has been giving me the silent treatment mostly. If she isn't doing that, she's just telling me how disappointed she is and not allowing me to open up about how I'm feeling. My whole life has collapsed around me. I understand that I don't deserve to be coddled, but I can't even speak to my parents about how I'm doing. I've barely been able to eat, I have no appetite, and most of what I do now is cry in my room at my mom and dad's house. I hate that the most recent intimacy I've had was with the man I cheated on my husband with nearly 4 months ago. I feel dirty. I keep showering, but the feeling doesn't go away. I just want to be with my husband. I know I have no right to feel like this, but I find myself daydreaming about being with him again like that, even if just to make that my last intimate experience. I haven't heard from a divorce attorney yet, so there was some hope out there, but I also haven't heard from my husband, so I don't know. I messaged his best friend, who's staying with him currently, to support him and make sure he's okay. She just replied, "He's doing fine, all things considered." She hasn't responded to any of my follow-up messages. I hate myself and what I've done. I don't know what to do with myself right now. How do I get rid of this feeling like I'm unclean? How do I sleep without these nightmares? How can I repair at least one of the relationships with someone in my family so I can actually talk to someone about how I feel? I wrote a letter to my husband that I don't know how to get to him. I'm not going to bother him, and I'm just going to keep it aside so I can give it to him when he decides he's willing to see me again. I regret everything I did and wish I could take it back. I can't, though, so how can I get to a point where my life isn't a living hellscape? In the midst of life's ups and downs, we frequently find ourselves battling with decisions we wish we could undo. Consider yourself in a position where remorse is an ever-present companion, sleep provides no relief, and dreams haunt your every waking moment. This is what the lady is going through as she struggles to live with the consequences of adultery. Infidelity has the capacity to destroy relationships and disrupt our emotional balance. It abandons us, unable to find peace in the arms of sleep. Many of us have had nights when sleep is elusive, when we toss and turn, tortured by our own acts. In these moments, we long for guidance, a lifeline to bring us out of the darkness. The story also emphasizes the isolating repercussions of her acts. It's a reminder that when we betray those we love, we not only hurt them, but we often become estranged from the support networks we previously valued. Friends and relatives who were previously pillars of support may drift apart as they seek to navigate the moral crossroads. The quest for redemption is perhaps one of the most compelling themes of the story. How does one get rid of the stain of guilt? It is commonplace for us to seek forgiveness and mend the hurt we have caused others and ourselves. We can all relate to the feeling of being unclean after making a mistake. The road to recovery is neither short nor easy, but it is doable. It starts with admitting wrongdoing and seeking expert help, as she is doing with her future counseling session. This road also includes self-forgiveness, which is the most difficult but necessary step toward recovery. Life can be a hellish journey at times, but it is possible to change it into a landscape of development and rebirth with patience, self-reflection, and the support of those ready to help. So if you enjoy these stories, you won't want to miss bitter, narcissistic ex tarnished my reputation and turned people against me. Now it's payback. That story is completely unbelievable. Also, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. It really helps us out, and you also stay in the loop about our upcoming videos. I'll see you at the next one. Thanks for watching.